went to check on Mom. She was lying on her bedroom floor and breathing like really awkwardly, and she was in a puddle of her own urine.
Welcome to Life and Times with Patrick Banks. I'm in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and my guest today might be single-handedly responsible for my love of 90s pop. Now, I'm not talking about Backstreet Boys and Spice Girls, although I like them too. I'm talking about Eurobeats, acts like La Bouche, and songs like Doopy Doop. While I was doing sock hops, she was pulling all-nighters at the roller rink. It was those sock hops that planted seeds that would sprout into the raver I would become. 9 years my senior. I once thought that a long time. Now it seems like the blink of an eye. I give you my sister, Tiffany. How's your day going?
Pretty good so far.
What are you doing for work these days?
I am working for a transportation logistics company. I'm in the road division. My company also does customs clearance, like brokerage stuff, as well as sea freight and air freight.
Sounds complicated.
It is. It can be.
How long have you been in that industry for?
23 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah. Not the same company, though.
So how'd you get into that sector?
Purely by accident. Straight out of high school, I had taken an office skills and technology course at, back then it was Winnipeg Tech something. I think they changed the name of it a couple of times already. But yeah, office skills and technology gave me answering phones, typing, and Excel was how I got my first job. It was at a logistics company. And someone was leaving to go on maternity leave. So I was hired to cover for that 1 year. Once that 1 year was finished, they had someone else leave the company and they hired me full time, and I stayed there for 9 years. My first job.
This is your first job?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Did you ever try to get a job before that?
Nope. No. That was my first. Nothing like, as a teenager, a lot of teenagers will work McDonald's or something like that. I never worked as a teenager.
Yeah, I couldn't get a job at McDonald's. I've tried several times.
Really?
They never hired me.
Oh my gosh. And yet it was the in thing way back when to get a job at McDonald's or like A&W or something, earn some extra money.
I just wasn't lucky enough. I don't know.
Wow.
I probably tried at least 3 or 4 times.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, my first job, I think my dad got me a homie hookup at like a greasy spoon restaurant called Rally's in East Kildonan. Yeah. Basically, it was like slave labor. I think I had been caught stealing. And so he like literally got me to work there for free for like a couple weeks as like a punishment. And then they just hired me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Funny, I got caught stealing and nothing happened. Uncle Derek gave me a pat on the back.
So let's go back. So when I was in kindergarten, we were living by Hastings School for a very brief time. Basically, all of the time that I was alive, our mom lived in the same apartment blocks. But this was like a very brief period. It couldn't have been that long, maybe like a year or something, that we had lived in a house in that area. And it was you, me, mom, and grandma. Can you explain to me what all you remember about that time, or like why that even happened, or do you know what I'm saying?
It was for a year, and I was 13 going on 14 because I turned 14. It would have been May of that year. So 1994. But mom and grandma, after not living together for, at that point, 5-6 years, they decided they would try living together, pooling their money so that they could rent a house. And that was how that happened. But it only lasted a year. They couldn't live together.
Because mom was already not working at that point, correct?
No, she was still working, but she was also subsidized. So her income wasn't enough to really sustain all of our expenses. So she was subsidized. The apartment buildings were Manitoba housing apartment buildings, so they allowed subsidies. So that's how she was able to afford living there.
When I was young, I remember having the list of her diseases memorized. And, it was like, oh, she has arthritis and fibromyalgia. And then there's like 4 or 5 other things that I don't recall now. As I get older, I started to resent that. Like, what was wrong with her?
That's probably a really complicated question. The mental and emotional issues never got properly diagnosed. Depression was in there and diagnosed, but she never got the therapy treatment that she really needed. She was abused by grandpa. I'm not sure how much details you would have heard from the other aunts and uncles, but she was abused pretty badly. And the others, as soon as they were old enough to get out of the house, they just left and they never looked back. So Mom took the brunt of a lot of that abuse. And then later on, of course, health issues ensued and she was never properly diagnosed with a lot of things. From there, getting older and not properly diagnosed, she would self-medicate with whatever she could get over the counter. And back then, it wasn't like it is now. Nothing was, computerized to keep track of medications and what doctors are prescribing what. So she would go to a whole bunch of different walk-in clinics to get a whole bunch of different medications, and then she would just take them to help herself feel better, I guess, which then led to the incident that later happened. It wasn't until that incident where she properly got diagnosed. Before then, she was never properly diagnosed.
Since you brought it up, we might as well on that. So I was in grade 2. From what I remember, I was in Saskatoon with my dad. We were visiting Grandpa. And when we found out, and the story from like what I remember was she was sleepwalking and ended up taking a bunch of pills, and you found her on the floor.
Yeah. Grandma had gone out east to New Brunswick because her mom at the time, great grandma Pearl, was declining from Alzheimer's. So she went out to help take care of her. And Grandma had adopted a kitten for me, my black cat. And so while she was gone, I was going up to her 1-bedroom apartment from our 2-bedroom apartment. By that point, you had already moved in with your dad. We had to move from the 3-bedroom to the 2-bedroom because you were no longer living with us. So the subsidy didn't allow for the 3rd bedroom if you weren't going to be living with Mom full time. So we moved to the 2-bedroom. So then I went upstairs to the 1-bedroom where Grandma was to help take care of my cat. And I came down from doing that one day and I went to check on Mom. She was lying on her bedroom floor and breathing like really awkwardly. And she was in a puddle of her own urine, which was really gross. Seeing her lying on the floor wasn't that bad though. It was summertime and she would often lie on the floor because it's cool. Because the airflow in those apartments wasn't exactly the greatest. If you wanted to have air conditioning in every single window, back then it was expensive. So there was only one in the living room. So seeing her lie on her bedroom floor where it's tiled, I've seen her lie on the floor sleeping before. But the way that she was breathing and that there was a puddle there, I wasn't sure. Again, trying to wake her up.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 17. So yeah, just going into 11th grade. Only I was 2 years behind, so I was still taking, I think, 10th grade geography. But yeah.
And then what, she ended up being in the psych ward for a little bit after that, right?
Yes, she went into the psych ward. Once she had recovered, they needed to pump her stomach. And something that Uncle Derek wishes he had told me before things, because he jumped in the car. He made it from Saskatoon to here in 6 hours. He wanted me to not see her when she was hooked up to all the tubes and stuff, but too late, I already saw her. But once she recovered from having her stomach pumped and everything, she did go to the psych ward for an evaluation. They needed to determine whether she was actually suicidal and if it was an accident or on purpose. And then she had some really strange behaviors and they held her for 2 weeks.
Like what?
I didn't witness all of it, thankfully. But what I did witness, she was just really erratic in her behaviors. She ended up from the Victoria Hospital walking home to the apartment buildings to get a pack of cigarettes. She wanted her pack of cigarettes from home rather than buying a new pack from, say, the gift shop or something. And we don't know why. She was just ignoring me. Grandma was driving me. We're trying to get her to get into the car and she wouldn't. And then of course, determining that she was actually addicted to the medications that she was taking because there were sleeping pills and painkillers that she was taking. I don't remember exactly the names of them or whatever, but.
Why do you think you were behind in school at the time? Do you think it had something to do with Mom?
Oh yeah, because of her sleepwalking. She was taking her sleeping pills, but then she didn't need the sleeping pills technically because she wasn't properly diagnosed at the time. She turned out she had sleep apnea. So the sleeping pills really weren't helping her. They weren't helping her sleep. So she was sleepwalking, and I would stay up at night with her. If she were to get up in the middle of the night, I would get up and I would sit with her to make sure that she wouldn't leave, to make sure that she wouldn't do weird things. I'd also hide her medication so that she couldn't take extra. So I ended up dropping a bunch of my morning classes and not going to my morning classes. So for 2 years, I was dropping classes, and then later I had to catch up.
Yeah, that's a hard position to be put into. I know I kind of feel that way now that I've reconnected with my dad. Like I feel like I've been smarter than him since I was like 15. I almost feel like I almost have to be a father to my dad. I'm a man, so it's different when you're a 15-year-old needing to be a parent to your parent. That must be a very hard position to be in.
Yep. Mom put me in a position to be, I don't know how to explain, like more mature, I guess, might be. More responsible than any other kid my age. Because even when you were born, I was 9. So I was responsible a lot for taking care of you once her and your dad split. I was constantly babysitting you. She worked a night shift. So especially weekends, I'd be the one to take care of you on the weekends that you were with her. I'd keep you quiet in the morning. I'd feed you. I'd still have to do all my chores. I had to do like all of the housework. The only things I didn't do was laundry and a lot of the dishes because I used too much soap and I wouldn't use hot water. I don't know.
It's a weird rebel.
I know. It wasn't really a rebel. That's just how I felt comfortable. I felt comfortable using lots of soap and just, lukewarm water. I didn't want to scold my hands, but Mom didn't like that. So she told me not to do the dishes. I didn't complain because I was already doing all of the tidying up. I was doing vacuuming. I was doing the sweeping and washing the floors. I was doing everything in the bathroom. I was cleaning your room. I was cleaning my room. And when the laundry was done, I was folding everything and putting everything away.
When did she stop working?
After the overdose. Fully, completely stopped working.
Yeah, and she never worked again, really, other than some like respite.
And that she wasn't even really getting paid for that. That wasn't like a paid job. That was more like volunteer, and she would get a certain amount of money for volunteering from assistants.
I thought at some point she was getting like under the table cash or something.
She might have been, but I never paid that much attention to it. I didn't want to end up being questioned and then being, oh yeah, she's getting all this money, and then she'd get in trouble because I knew something. So I tried not to pay attention to it.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, there's a lot back then that I know you wouldn't remember all. You were too young to remember all that stuff.
Is there anything you can think of right now that you want to share?
Not really from way back then.
I feel like there wasn't. Was there like lots of partying going on at the apartment, like after roller rink nights and stuff? I don't think it was like tons, but I remember there was definitely a couple times where I remember like people were playing quarters. And they would let me like shoot the quarter into the shot glass and then they'd shoot it. And my dad was pissed about that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which I totally understand. I wouldn't want my kid doing that. I'd be like, what the fuck? So I totally understand why he'd be mad about that.
Most of the partying happened on weekends when you were with your dad. But then the odd time the people would be there and it was your weekend to be there. Or something would happen and schedule changed and you were there. I really don't know why. But Mom at that time too, like I said, she was taking a lot of her medications. She wasn't properly diagnosed and she was taking too much of her medications. So I don't think she was fully with it, making those decisions to allow those parties. But yeah, we had two hide-a-beds at the time. So she was letting everyone like spend the night.
And then taking even a further step back. So we're only half siblings, same mom, different dad. And then so you never met your dad, is that correct?
No, I don't even know. I don't know what he looks like. I'm pretty sure I have his eyes, but I've never seen a picture of him. She told me a name, but I honestly don't know if it's accurate or not. She said some crazy things about him. So like he was on parole for armed bank robbery when she met him, and he's a hired assassin, which I don't know. You know what I mean?
That sounds like a junky thing to say.
I know, it sounds like an odd thing to say. Or if she was just making stuff up because she didn't want me to try and find him. I don't know. After she passed, though, I did do a DNA test. She did tell me that he was British, full on with the British accent. I am mostly British and Irish, so that probably stands true.
She got knocked up and then just never in your life at all, right?
Never. I don't think he even knows I exist.
How do you think that affected you?
Well, by the time I was born, Uncle Derek was 14 and Mom was living with Grandma when I was born. So I had 3 parents growing up. So I had Uncle Derek was a father figure. Even when I remember being in the early grades of school, when you would do like Happy Father's Day cards and like gifts to make stuff, I would Happy Father's Day, Uncle Derek. And like, oh, no, they're telling the school the staff telling me, no, he's not your dad, he's your uncle. I'm like, no, he's my dad. That's not possible. That's awfully redneck right there. But because I was too young to understand, but no, he's always been my Father's Day, everything. I wish him Happy Father's Day.
So you're pretty introverted.
Yeah.
But you do have like some really close friends that I feel like you met when we were living at that house in Hastings. Can you tell me about them and how you met them and who they are? And
yeah, when we moved into that house, I ended up changing schools halfway through 8th grade. So I went from Darwin to Hastings. And starting at Hastings, one of the absolute first people that ever approached me to introduce herself and welcome me to my new school was Stephanie. And this year, it'll be 30 years of our friendship. We stayed friends. She brought me home. I met her parents and her sister. They've just adopted me as one of their own. They've taken me to their cottage out in Ontario, and I spend every holiday with them now.
I personally feel like I want so much more. I really want familial connection out of my friends, which most people don't want that. They have family for that, right? So it's like hard to get that out of people. Why do you think you seem just like content not meeting people, or you know what I'm trying to say?
I know what you're trying to say. I really don't know. I think I'm just content with the people that are in my life. So especially with Stephanie and her sister being so close and being part of their family, their kids call me auntie. I'm an honorary auntie. And yeah, I go to work, I make work friends, if not really friends. I think there's different levels of friendships. And so I have work friends. I also have former colleagues that I've worked with that I still keep in touch with, even though we're not super close. We don't talk every day or anything, but I still keep in touch with them a little bit. And I find that's enough for me. Like, I have my really close friends and then the odd friends here and there. And I'm happy with that.
I guess I know haven't always like seen eye to eye, I guess, on the subject. Like I find it like when we're together, it's great. Like it's perfect. But yeah, sometimes I know I really do put pressure on you, call me more and stuff, but I get it. It's just like not how you're wired, but it does. I just like crave it so much. Like actually the one thing I can't actually talk about on camera is so I can't get into it too much, but I've recently severed my relationship with my like long-term mentor. And so, you know, like that was the place that I would go for Christmas and stuff, but that's no longer going to be on the table at all anymore.
That was your former coach, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know who you're talking about then.
Yeah. And one of the only reasons I was even able to make that decision is because I guess I'm like closer to my dad now. Or it's like, for example, at Christmas, I hate Christmas because when everyone gets to be with their family, I get to be alone. You know, like normally I'll just like try to work. I'll either like write or I'll do video editing or something. Like this year, and I was going pretty hard trying to get the first video out, but I had like a stomach flu this year, so I just slept and watched TV all day by myself, just hung out with the dog. You know what I mean? It's not my favorite time of the year. And even people are like, oh, we're family. Well, I didn't get invited to your Christmas. You know what I mean?
Our Christmases too were really weird. Mom never did the traditional Santa Claus with me, but she also wasn't super religious. It was odd. Once you got to an age where you were going back and forth for the holidays, she started just doing Christmas on Christmas Eve. You would be back and forth for Christmas Day. So one year, Christmas Day with us, one day, the next year, Christmas Day was with your dad. So she decided New Year's or Christmas Eve would be our Christmas Day. And then dinners, and it got really weird. One year, Grandma and her decided to do a big roast instead of turkey. And yeah, it went bad. Mom just complained about everything. That was how she was too.
Yeah, I remember I never got a surprise. I always had to pick out my gifts, and then she just wrapped them, and so I already knew what it was.
Yeah.
And I remember it was actually my COVID birthday. I had a stripper party. I know it sounds weird, but whatever, I made it happen. It was expensive, but you know, strippers cost a lot more during COVID times, I'll tell you what. But one of my friends showed up like 2-3 in the morning. I'm fucking wasted on ketamine, and he shows up, and he's from Vancouver. He's Lucas. First episode coming out soon. Yeah, he shows up, and I'd like a tear came in my eye because that was like my first real surprise that I've ever had that I remember. I was like, and that was really. It wasn't, until I was like 31 or 32 or something. I really like learned the value of a surprise.
Yeah.
I always thought it was cool. I had to pick up my gifts, but honestly, like I think not knowing is better, honestly.
Mom always did that with me too. I always knew what I was getting. She was always really tight for money, so she had to budget, and she wanted to make sure if she's going to get us stuff, she wanted to make sure it was stuff that we wanted. So keeping it secret, it wasn't really.
Yeah, and then I remember her being very slovenly, like messy, and we would help clean up, and then she'd get mad at us for putting stuff away where she didn't know where it was.
Yeah.
We're like, what the fuck? Then you do it.
The last time I went over to help her clean, oh my gosh, her place was disgusting. There was garbage everywhere. She hadn't done laundry in a while. Dishes in the kitchen were piled, and I went in. She asked me to come over to help her clean. I go over to help her clean, and she's wanting to show me different arts and crafts that she's been doing. She wants to show me pictures and different things. She wants me to like sit in the filth and like have a conversation with her. And I'm like, I'm here to help clean. And she's, well, then go home then. Don't help me anymore. And I'm like, okay, bye. And I never helped her again since. She ended up hiring a neighbor for, I'm sure, peanuts.
Yeah, the Glen Meadow blocks were like a low income. Yeah, so she would kind of make friends with the single moms, and she'd like help babysit them and stuff. Did you feel any resentment towards her in the fact that she always did so much babysitting versus like how she treated us?
I felt in the early days when she was doing a lot of babysitting, I felt resentment. But then I realized later that she wasn't properly diagnosed, wasn't getting the proper treatment that she actually needed to spend time with us the way that she was able to spend time with these kids that she was babysitting. So it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same situation.
So are you saying that when she was doing all this babysitting, she was more properly diagnosed?
Yeah. Because that happened after the overdose. She was properly diagnosed with proper medication, even though she didn't follow all the rules that the doctor still gave her as far as like exercise and staying active. Even making a schedule for herself to stick to it, she wouldn't. And I don't know exactly how that would all work too. Like a lot of mental and emotional stuff wasn't properly diagnosed. I think there was other stuff there, especially from the abuse that she suffered from not only grandpa, but from your dad as well. Unfortunately, it was a lot that she never properly like processed and dealt with.
I'd heard a story where, and I could be wrong, but I remember her saying that she had to like force you to go to school, or she like handcuffed her to yourself and drag you to school. Is that true? Did that happen?
Not the handcuff part. There was a situation, I think I was first grade, a neighbor from one of the other apartment buildings. Back in the day too, the buildings didn't have the security doors, so you didn't need a key to get actually into the building yet. So I went to the other building to get a friend who was actually a couple years older than me, but her cat had just had kittens. And I skipped school for the day to stay at her place with her and the kittens. So by the time the end of the day comes, I'm like, ooh, end of the day, everyone else is coming home from school. I, followed the line. I went home. Just, where have you been? I'm like, school. No, you weren't. I got a call from the school. And I'm like, I didn't know that was a thing. So I got trouble for skipping school that day. And so Mom did walk me to school for only a short time. It didn't last very long. I went to school. I knew I was going to get in trouble.
And then, so when you two stopped living together, how old were you at that time?
17.
Can you tell me that story? Because you didn't move out, is that correct?
No, not technically, because I wasn't old enough to, but it was after her overdose. Once she went through the psych ward and she had to go through the Addictions Foundation of Manitoba, she had to join AA. Once she was released from all that and she was allowed to come home, she didn't want the responsibility of having me around anymore. And she and Grandma switched apartments. So Grandma moved into the 2-bedroom apartment with me, and Mom moved into the 1-bedroom apartment that Grandma had been in. I don't know exactly what happened in the background, like if they were actually allowed to do that, but they did it. And I lived with Grandma until I was 18.
Now that mirrors the situation I had with her. So when I was in grade 11, my dad had gotten back together with my stepmom, and we were living in this house in Elmwood, and me and him had we almost got into a fist fight. I purposely never hit him because I knew how, what's the word? We held grudges. And in my mind as a teenager, I was under the assumption that if I hit him, he would never forgive me and like would never talk to me again. So I just like purposely didn't hit him. But then, so I moved out. So I just left. So I went to mom's, and at this time she's living in a 1-bedroom apartment. So I was there for 6 months. That summer, she went to Saskatoon to house sit for the whole summer. And I had like taken your car joyriding a couple times. And I think I caught because I parked in the wrong place. So she gets back and she's like, so we decided you're going to go live with Tiffany. And I just felt betrayed and abandoned. And I didn't talk to her for like a long time after that because I wasn't consulted. How did you feel when, because I remember you didn't say it now, but you've said it off camera before that she moved out on you. I remember that's how you phrased it in the past.
Yeah.
How did you feel when that happened?
Oh my gosh, I was so scared, upset for the fact that she had overdosed in the first place. And then it seemed like there was no comfort for me. Like she never gave me any comfort after. And then the way that she had, like I said, reacted, like walking on Bishop Grandin to get home just to get her pack of cigarettes, like it was so scary. Like I was like in the car because she wouldn't get in the car. Like it was so emotionally overwhelming. And then I was already starting school by the time she was released and was able to come back home. I was so depressed. I had a teacher accuse me of being high when I was actually depressed from the whole situation. Hate that teacher, by the way. But she never did sit me down and talk to me either to explain what was going on. I overheard her talking to other people that she didn't want the responsibility of having me around anymore. When I was also doing like I said, the housework, I was still doing the majority of the housework, which we learned later she wasn't keeping up her housework. She never did explain anything to me. So I wouldn't say I resented her for it. I also had Grandma and Uncle Derek always in my ear, just in one ear and out the other. Don't pay attention to her. Don't pay her no mind. Just constantly repetitive all the time, whenever there was a situation. She would blow up at me and I'd go run crying to Grandma, even as a kid. Don't pay her no mind. And she would sit me on her lap in her rocking chair and rock me while I cried about the situation. And so that was constant with Mom. I never, ever fully understood what was going on, and she never explained anything to me. I just, okay, that's how it is, and move on with it, unfortunately. But I know you never had the same thing. You weren't as close with Grandma and Uncle Derek the way that I had been. So their advice to you about Mom wasn't there the same way.
So she passed away in 2015.
2016.
Was it 2016?
Yep.
I just remember getting a call. Can you detail that incident? Like what happened?
So I went into the hospital and had my tonsils out. Stephanie actually drove me to the hospital and picked me up because at that point I wasn't letting Mom drive. I had been told by her doctor that she shouldn't be driving with the meds that she's taking, and that had stood already for several years. I wouldn't allow her to drive me, so Steph took me, and I was still recovering from having my tonsils out, and Mom was sick. She wasn't feeling well, which not unusual.
Yeah.
She wanted me to go and pick her up some stuff from the store. And so I had already stopped taking the prescription level painkillers I was given. I was still really sore, but it was fine to not take the prescription level, just a regular Tylenol, which means I could drive. So I drove to the store and I picked up some stuff for her. And then a couple days later, she's saying she's so sick that she was so out of it, she wasn't able to even call me properly. And I'm like, Mom, you need to call 911 and get an ambulance. You need to go to the hospital. I'm like, I'm not able to get you to the hospital. You need to get an ambulance. And I had to walk her through, because at that point she had her landline and the cell phone that was on the family plan. I was paying for her cell phone. And so she was able to get on to 911. I went to her place and was able to clear a path for the paramedics to actually get into the apartment to get to her to assess Initially, she had shat herself on the couch that she had there. She had such bad diarrhea that she wasn't able to make it to the bathroom. They used her walker to actually push her out into the main building hallway and then to get her onto the gurney. And then I followed the ambulance with her walker in my car and her sleep apnea machine. I went back to her place to get her sleep apnea machine to take that into the hospital too. But they admitted her, and it took them a couple of days to get blood work back to actually know that she had a severe infection. And by that time, she had started to get a little bit better, and then she got worse again. And then that's when we called you. But it wasn't the first time she had gone into the hospital. She had been into the hospital for herself a couple of times before. Nothing serious, and she was fine and came out, didn't tell anybody, just dealt with it, and she was fine. She's also been into the hospital for people that she knew to go with them, to be with them. So mom's in the hospital. For me, it wasn't that big of a deal. She was in all the time. The only time that it started to get serious is because she had started to get a little bit better and then started declining again. That's where, oh no, this is serious, because normally she would get better and then she would just get better and she'd be fine.
I know we didn't do like an official obituary, but I wrote a poem about it.
On Mother's Day, my sister and I woke up and went to the blocks, the building blocks of my life, the cornerstones of my childhood. Mom lived there almost my entire life. In the early 90s, when roller skating was hot, she was cool. She was the rink mom. She chaperoned parties, threw the best birthday parties. Her birthday was May 24th. My sister's May 25th and mine May 27th. I never forgot her birthday. She always let me sleep in her bed if I had a bad dream when I was a kid. My elementary school was across the street as we drove down the street. I imagined Mom walking me to school on my first day. I told her I was scared. She assured me it would be okay. We parked into visitor parking. As we walked past the park, I saw myself playing. I could hear an echo of her voice calling me out the window. "Patrick." I ran to the door, and a middle-aged man and woman opened it for me. We walked down the hall and opened the apartment door. I could smell her, that distinct scent that is Mom. We came to clean the apartment while she's not home. All three of us are messy, but she's been sick a long time. We started taking the garbage out of the living room. For 7 years, almost every other weekend, the three of us sat in an identical living room in the blocks and watched every episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I stood in the exact spot I hugged her last. It had been so long before that when she embraced me. I could feel the longing and happiness I wish I could feel again. Over the last year, I had been talking to her a lot. I wanted to help her. One conversation, she told me about problems she was having with her teeth. She couldn't afford to get them fixed, so she got them pulled. When I started to clean the bathroom, I opened the medicine cabinet and there were her teeth. Some might think this disgusting, but when I was a child, I always wanted to keep my teeth instead of giving them to the tooth fairy. Mom would help me write a letter to the tooth fairy, asking if I could keep my tooth and have a quarter. The tooth fairy always said yes. Mom was the best tooth fairy. When she kept those teeth, I know she smiled and thought about me. Her craft supplies were strewn about, balls of wool, crochet needles, half-finished blankets. I've slept with a blanket she's made almost every day of my life. I started to do the dishes that were once dirty from the most delicious homemade cakes, shake and bake, and steaks. We didn't clean everything because we needed home care to see she needs help. As we drove to the hospital, I thought about how vibrant and colorful she was. She's creative, always made the best of a bad situation. She was there for people. She had very little, but gave the gift of her time to so many. How she dressed said it all. Imagine a yellow and purple geometric floral patterned shirt. Her laugh was hearty and her smile genuine. She deserved more respect than she got. We walked into the intensive care unit, my sister on her left, I on her right. She was sedated, but we knew she was breathing on her own. We told her about our day and I told her about my stories. She writes too. We could feel her twitch as we held her hands and see her eyes moving behind their lids. We saw hope and counted her breaths, but it was a glimpse. She had a 90% chance of death. It was no more than 4 hours later we saw her blue lips. She was cold. She was not old. She will be loved. She will be missed. She will be respected. On Mother's Day, Mom, Daphne Alice Kelly, passed away May 24th, 1960 to May 8th, 2016.
Yeah, so that was the poem I wrote. Yeah, I kind of regret us not doing like a proper obituary. We just like posted on Facebook because we're poor, but what can you do?
Yeah, at the time, because that was after Grandma had already passed a year and a half prior. I had been working 2 jobs to help support them, but I still ended up going into bankruptcy, so I couldn't afford anything.
I ended up, this flows into the era of the big party. My very first big party I threw was a fundraiser for Mom's tombstone. And people like came to give their condolences and donate or whatever. And then they stayed because it was the craziest party they'd ever been to. Have I talked about this party before? We have time to kill. I'm not sure if I want to talk about that party right now.
I know you hired a bunch of things for that one. I think you told me about it.
I had like 4 big parties. Yeah, that one, we had like a barbecue and I had like DJs. It wasn't like the craziest big party I ever had, but it was the best one under the circumstances. Weird, but oh my goodness. So I had it during Stampede because Stampede's the best time to have a party because they literally changed the bylaws so you can be louder later. So I invited like 500 people, all my work friends, just, lots of people I didn't know. At the time, I think I was doing like Molly that night, but it was weird. I like couldn't drop it. It like made me puke 50-50.
Oh, no.
So I was like snorting it. Don't do that. It doesn't absorb through your membranes that way. You're only getting high through the drips, but it's a way to regulate it because it's only getting in so fast. But yeah, so I'm like snorting Molly all night. And at some point, I've totally told this story, whatever. So at some point I wanted ping pong balls for beer pong. We couldn't find fucking ping pong balls. I had sent people on missions to go find them. Couldn't get them. Not at the dollar store, not at Shoppers, whatever. Finally, my foreman shows up and I'm like, oh, you got ping pong balls? He's like, yeah, at my house. Okay, go get them. He said, you gotta come with me. I like turn around. There's like 200 people at my house. I'm like, okay. Dumbest thing I've ever done. Get in the truck with him. We like go to the other side of downtown where he lives to get these ping pong balls. It's Stampede.
Oh,
it takes
my God.
a half hour to cross downtown. We get the ping pong balls. He peels out. This dude's like drinking and driving. There's like an
God.
open case of beer in the cab of his truck. Peels out of his place. We're fucked. He's like, oh, he gives me an open beer can. I'm like, what do you want me to do with this? I like take my shoe off, put it in my shoe, like hide it under the seat. How they didn't smell this beer, I don't know. So there's like this open case of beer behind us. We're both like reaching and like covering it with like loose papers. As the cops roll up both sides, he doesn't get a DUI. He gets like a dangerous driving ticket. They let us go. We get back to the party. He like wanted some M. I gave him like a 0.2, which is a lot. A normal dose is like a 1.2, 1.5. And so Buddy's fucking rolling on the couch. And at some point, the party's going. I'm in my bedroom. I have somebody weighing out drugs to sell for me. I have a dude who's a chartered accountant. We're going to be interviewing him soon. Counting my money. I have like a fucking hot girl on my arm. And I'm just like, this is what it feels like to be a baller. I like this. And so at some point, I was like taking a big bong hoot and it upset my stomach. So I had to go puke. I puked and I call it unicorn blood because it was just bile and Molly.
Oh.
It was just sparkly. And so I'm like, after this, I'm like trying to go get something to drink or something to eat. And this girl walks up to me. She's like, do you want to make out? And I was like, yes. 1 second. I run upstairs to go brush my teeth. We sit down on the love seat, start making out beside my boss, who's rolling. He's like,
Oh my God.
like, and we're just like, we start making out. I remember like the next day or a couple days later, we had like a little couple week fling. She's like, that was your boss?
Oh my God.
Yeah, somebody had given me like mushroom chocolates. So yeah, so we're like upstairs, we start fooling around and the DJ like knocks on my door and he's like, I'm like, go away, I'm busy. He's like, no. I open the door and he sees her. He's like, I was like, what do you want? He's like, oh, I'd like to get paid. I was like, 50 or 100 or however much it was. He's like, oh, well, 100 would be better. I just take out this wad of cash out of my breast pocket and just throw it in his face and slam the door and then go and like bang this chick up against the wall. And so she's like riding me and I'm like hallucinating. Fireworks are like going off as she's riding me. It was awesome. It's a good time. I gotta admit, it was a great time. was just chasing that dragon for a lot of years. I tell you what. Yeah, and that was the best. That was the party where I raised money for my mom's tombstone.
Her tombstone was expensive. Oh my God, it's expensive to die.
How much do you think it cost?
It was $2,400.
Like in all, or just the tombstone?
Just the tombstone. But that's one thing I can say I've never done. I've never been high.
Yeah, you've never been drunk either.
No.
Do you think that mom had something to do with that? Like seeing her, how she was, influenced you?
Definitely. I definitely have issues just taking pills, just for a headache. I have a hard time taking pills. But yeah, losing control, seeing her, the way that she would sleepwalk, and then she wouldn't remember anything she did because of the sleeping pills that she was taking. There was just a lot of stuff going on that I don't want to be like that.
I used to say the same thing too, and then I became a pill popper anyway. You know, I remember coming home from work 2015 because I just hated work. I didn't like doing the trades, but it's the only job I could get that paid even kind of decent, and even then it didn't pay that well. But I just had these negative feelings constantly, and I would just come home and then chain smoke joints until I didn't feel it anymore. And then when I got into dealing and I just had access to everything that I wanted whenever I wanted it, I don't know, raving was an escape. It was like there's a book, it's The War of Art. Don't get it confused with The Art of War by Sun Tzu, which is also a good book, but it's Stephen Pressfield, I believe. I've read it. I've listened to it on audiobook, but
that counts as reading. I read audiobooks.
But he talks about something that I find very profound, and he talks about actually how people at the rave, it's like a meditation. It's about, which I completely agree with, because when you're there dancing, there's nothing but the music. You don't have any thoughts. It's the purest meditation. I always consider it like a cheat code to meditation, because yeah, of course you can do it sober, but it's very hard and it takes a long time. But there's just no thoughts.
Yeah.
You know,
it's just a feeling.
Yeah, I like to be the conduit for the music.
Yeah.
You know, I think the time has passed. I don't foresee that in my future anymore, but I do look at those times with fond memories.
Yeah, those days, we need to put them behind us at some point. I still have my roller skates.
Too bad there aren't any roller rinks, though.
Wheelies still exists.
When's the last time you went roller skating?
Oh my God. To an actual rink was the last day Saints was open. But I've been outside in my 20s, but I'm in my 40s now. I'm pretty sure I would break myself if I tried.
Baby steps. That'll work your way up. Yeah, well, that's a look into my past, and that's the life and times.